Good morning everybody and welcome back to yet another rule of language learning. And you better get used to this because these rules of language learning are going to come thick and fast, and I have an endless store of them in my brain. So we are in this for the long haul. I remember when I trained as a teacher, I was lucky enough to have some of the best trainers in the business. These teacher trainers understood that people like me, a newbie teacher, didn't have the capacity to learn too much at one time. If they taught us too many teaching techniques all at the same time, we would just get confused and overwhelmed. So what these trainers did is to think of the most important things for new teachers to learn and kind of package these things up into bite-sized ideas, and then they would hammer home these ideas over and over and over in an effort to get you to remember them. Not entirely unlike these rules of language learning that I'm presenting to you here. You might have spotted similar themes cropping up over and over again. Maybe. Anyway, one of the ideas that I still remember to this day and that proved very useful to me as a teacher is the concept of personalization. So what is personalization? Well, personalization means taking some language that you've just learned and then using that language to express something personal. Not to parrot a line from a textbook, but to make it your own. Let's take a very simple example. Imagine I'm teaching you a new language and I teach you the verb to go in that language. I might teach you the verb itself and what it means, and then get you to do some conjugation practice, I go, you go, he goes, and so on. And then in the last part, what I do later then, after all this learning, is to get you to do some personalization. And so what you might do then is to have a conversation with another student and talk about all the places you like to go to. This is an example of what we would call personalization. It's personalizing what you're learning. And this concept in teaching is actually really, really smart, because you see there are different levels of actually knowing a word. On one end of the spectrum, there might be a word that you know just vaguely, peripherally, and all you can do is maybe recognize it if you hear it. But then on the other extreme, there's really knowing that word, inside out, back to front, such that you can recall it on demand and use it perfectly every time in your own speech. There are different levels of knowing a word, or anything in language learning for that matter. And there is one thing you can do that reliably helps you to get to know something much, much better than you already do. And what is that thing? Yes, you guessed it, it is personalization. But for the purposes of this video, I'd like to take that word, it's a bit of a pain to say, personalization, and make it a lot more practical. In plain English, the best way to really learn a new word, a piece of grammar or whatever, to actually own it and make it your own is to use it. That's right, it's really pretty simple, but it's worth remembering, especially if you tend to study by yourself a lot of the time. When you learn something new, you really should go out and use it. So if you learn a new word in your textbook, make sure you then go out and use that word with your speaking partner or teacher. If you've learnt a new grammar construction, go out and write 10 sentences using it about your day. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, providing that you're making it your own somehow. Now, depending on how you like to learn, it might be practically very difficult to intentionally go out and use every single new thing that you learn. But you certainly can do this with words, phrases, or grammar that you've decided that you really want to be able to use, very specific pieces of language. And a trick that I often use is to make a list of the words and phrases that I want to practice, maybe things I've learned recently or that I want to improve, and send that list to my teacher before our lesson. So I'll say to him or her, can you help me practice this stuff here in this list in our lesson today? Now teachers love this because they know exactly how you want to use your lesson time, which makes their job much, much easier. Now, speaking is generally a good way to hammer it into your brain, but it doesn't have to be speaking. It could just as easily be writing. It could be chatting in Facebook groups, whatever. It could be sending messages back and forth on WhatsApp. It doesn't matter how you do it. Just use it, okay? And you tell me, this concept of personalization or simply using what you've learned, it makes a lot of sense, right? What's that adage about remembering 20% of what you hear, 40% of what you hear and see, 60% of what you hear, see, and say? Whatever, I'm probably massacring that saying, but you get the point, right? Once you've said something a few times in real conversation, having studied it before or read it before, you're much more likely to then remember it for the long term because you've used it for real communication. That is the polyglot equivalent of personalization in the language teaching world. And you could be forgiven for saying that this is rather obvious. And if you did think that, well, like many of these rules of language learning, you would be right. But like I always say, simple is best. Simple always makes it easy to remember, and I like that. And if you like simple things, then subscribe to this channel, like this video, and just remember, first learn it, then use it. Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did enjoy it and you'd like me to continue this series of the rules of language learning, then you can let me know by liking this video. Also, if you'd like to be notified when I upload new videos every week, then you can subscribe to the channel using the big red button below, and the videos will pop right up in your news feed.